Lady wants coffee from a fresh pot. This happened about more than 10 years ago, but I consider it one of my finest moments. I was working at Tim Hortons, Canadian coffee chain, as an assistant manager. Half my shifts were spent in the office, the other half in the drive-thru, relieving employees for breaks. It's mid-afternoon, and it's pretty slow. A van pulls up on the speaker, and I answer. Me. Welcome to Tim Hortons. How can I help you? Lady. Hi, I want a medium coffee, double, from a fresh pot. I don't want something that's been sitting there for hours. I want a fresh pot. It's important to note that she's talking really slowly and really loudly and forcefully. Like she's sure we're a bunch of high school dropouts who don't know how to make a cup of coffee. It's degrading. Our coffee pots are timed for 20 minutes from the second they stop brewing. We had this white chalk pencil thing that would write on the hot pot. So while the lady is repeating her desire for a fresh pot, my coworker has already made the coffee from the pot that technically was still dripping. Me. Fresh pot. Got it. Please pull ahead. I tell the staff that I'm personally going to handle this, as I already know that this isn't going to be the end of her rudeness. The lady comes to the window, drops her change in my open hand angrily, the coins bouncing off each other and nearly winding up on the cement outside. I roll my eyes and hand her the coffee. As I'm putting the coins into the till, I'm watching her out of the corner of my eye. She opens the lid, smells the coffee, takes a tiny sip, then, Lady. Excuse me, I wanted a fresh pot. This coffee's been sitting there for hours. Me. No, it hasn't. My coworker actually pulled this still brewing pot out and poured your coffee from that pot. Lady. You're wrong. I know this is old. This is not Tim Hortons coffee. Smell this. Taste this. She passes the cup to her horrified female passenger who doesn't want to get involved, but leans towards the cup and takes a sniff. See, this is not Tim Hortons coffee. I know Tim Hortons coffee. Me. You're right, ma'am. It's Robin's coffee. What do you want from us? Lady turns tomato red and screaming. I want my coffee from a fresh pot. I stick out my hand and grab the coffee back and start walking around the corner to the front of the store. My coworker hands me a new coffee, but I reply, no, I have to find the freshest pot. So, once I'm around the corner out of view, I remove the old lid, stick a new lid on the coffee, and wait a minute. My coworkers are watching what I'm doing and trying to cover a smirk. I return to the window and hand the coffee out and say, here you go. The lady opens the lid, takes a whiff and a long sip of the exact same coffee, and, Lady, see, this is what Tim Hortons coffee should taste like. Me, well, that coffee came from the exact same pot as the last coffee I gave you. Her jaw drops, and you can see the blood draining from her face. She takes another sip, and then... No, this doesn't taste right. Does this smell right? No, I want my money back. She hands me the coffee, and I hand her back her change, and she drives off. Thankfully, she never visited my store again. You know when you find a little spoiled brat whiny kid at the mall or wherever, and they're just whining and pulling on their parents' hands and not getting disciplined at all for it? Well, here's the adult they turn into. That's the wrong kind of tank. Not my Malicious Compliance, but one from London. With the UK being the UK, you need permission from the council to do anything on your plot of land. One gentleman owned a plot of land on Mandela Way in London and wanted to develop some property on the land. However, the council did not want this to go through and so turned him down. Cue his Malicious Compliance. He wrote to the council asking to put a tank on the land. The council thought he meant a septic tank. What he in fact meant was a T-34 Russian tank used during the Prague Spring of 1968. When he placed the tank on the land, he pointed the barrel in the direction of the council building as a final screw you. The council cannot remove it, as technically they gave him full permission to place the tank on the land. If you want to read more about Stompy the Tank, you can read about it here. Apologies if it's not as malicious as hoped. And if I can remember, I'll probably post this either in the comments down below or in the description. Hopefully I remember. I broke my general manager's car. Before I continue, breaking his car was not on purpose. Recently, our security gate broke at work. The gate was not put in place, so all the cars stopped and pedestrians thought that the area was safer. Without the gate, most vehicles just go flying through that area now at about 50 kilometers an hour or so. Obvious with pedestrians, it is a safety issue. My boss comes to me and tells me the general manager wants to install speed bumps to slow people down, as a new gate would cost too much money. Sure, so I asked about the details, and since it is coming from higher up, he doesn't have any. I go to the general manager to inquire about height, width, how many, etc. Instead of answering my questions, I promptly get told to do my job and stop asking so many questions, much to my annoyance. Just get some that will make people stop. My general manager is a bit of a dick. Talk to the head of security to order the speed bumps I chose. They're about 3 inches high. I ordered high ones so people would have to come to a dead stop to get over them. Pretty safe. Fast forward a day and I have them installed. I start getting complaints that they're too high and people have to stop to get over them. That was kind of the point. Anyways, the general managers know they have been installed and he's super happy. Until he decides to race over them instead of stopping. Tore his catalytic converter right off his car. He gets upset that I installed high speed bumps and I just say, "You are supposed to stop." He just grumbled. Been over a week and they are still installed and have not heard anything since. Everyone stops now, of course. He even was so kind as to post the exact speed bumps he ordered. So, boop, there you go. Adjust my profit margins? Say no more. My dad owned a construction company that specialized in building boathouses, boat docks, and fishing piers. He often had to work with snooty clientele with more money than God. The lake most of his work took place at was not terribly far from DFW. Dad had a very thick southern accent. A lot of his clientele assumed he wasn't smart based upon his accent and could be incredibly patronizing and assume they knew his business better than he did. Frequently, he would have repeat customers who would buy and sell properties on this one lake. One of the clients, we will call SC for snooty client, had my dad build 2 to 3 properties already when he bought up another property. He called my dad to look at some plans and make a bid. After Dad had a few days to calculate the costs, he went to SC's house with a bid. SC was a multi-millionaire, but would complain and nitpick cost every time Dad had bid a job. He always ended up using Dad, but he'd complain a lot first. Anyways, Dad takes the bid to him, and SC argues that it's far too high, even after Dad showed him the discount he made since SC was a repeat customer. You need to call up your accountant and have your profit margins reviewed. Come back to me with something more in line with what your accountant says is fair. Dad just smiled and nodded. He brought his figures to the accountant, and it turned out his profit margins were too low, even before the discount was applied. Dad calls SC and tells him what the accountant said, and there's a long silence on the other line. Dad told SC he would honor the quote he provided for 3 days, after which the cost would allow for a 3% increase after refiguring materials. Dad said he could attach documents from the accountant showing his profit margin if SC was interested. SC sulked a bit, but ended up signing the contract at the original price. Yeah, he sounds like a little bit of a douche, but at the same time you gotta think, in the multi-millionaire world, you never go with the first bid. You gotta learn to haggle a little bit, otherwise they're just gonna use you and spit you out. Want to be called by your formal name? No problem. However, you must do the same. Years ago, I was working for a university as a secretary for a rather large department. I was told by the chair to call everyone by their first name, rather than the formal Dr. So-and-so. I complied, and life went on with me using informal names and them doing the same for me. However, about a year later, I called to Dr. So-and-so in the next room to ask a question. It was benign enough and still respectful using his first name. Not long after, I received an email. He addressed it to Risley and stated that I needed to call him Dr. So-and-so and not use his first name. I knew this was a way to establish his superiority over me, but I would not have it. I may have been the secretary, but I was still a human being who deserved respect too. Here is where the malicious compliance came into play. I wrote him back an email addressing him as Dr. So-and-so. I agreed to call him by his formal name, but I insisted that he do the same to me. I am no longer Risley, but Miss Doe. I copied the department chair and executive aide, so we were all in the loop. He went to the chair to complain, but she sided with me. And so it began. From then on out, it was Dr. So-and-so on every correspondent, and when I spoke to him, if he addressed me as Risley, I would remind him that I wanted to be addressed as Miss Doe, and would not answer until he addressed me as such. This really got on his nerve. He did not want to be the only one to call me by the formal, as it messed with his need for superiority over a peon. It only took less than a week before he wrote me again. This time it was to say please call him Paul instead of Dr. So-and-so. No apology to me, just a resounding white flag surrender. I took it as a small win for the peons and proceeded to call him Paul. I worked in that department for 8 years and we never had another problem like this. God, this is such a flashback moment for me at school, and I'm sure all you guys listening. I did not spend 8 years at school to be called Mr. I am Dr. So-and-so. Ugh, gross. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. You know the drill by now. If you like what you heard, consider subscribing if you're new around here. And if you really liked it, maybe consider giving it a thumbs up and a share. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.